Welcome to the Mouse Bytes podcast. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mouse Bytes podcast. It is a show all about Disney video games, past and present. My name is Jeph and and I will be one of the co-hosts of the show. And I am joined by Mr. Clay Howard, who is also going to be regularly hosting.
Yes.
Clay, how are you, buddy?
Good. How are you doing, man?
Pretty darn good.
Awesome.
Excited.
Yeah, our first official episode.
Yep.
Good stuff. I think we picked a great first game, so I'm stoked.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to kind of talking about this. This week we are going to lead off our series with the game titled Mickey Mania: The Timeless Adventures of Mickey Mouse. All right, so to kick this off, we're going to quickly look at what the heck this game is, and then talk a little bit about our initial thoughts and any previous experiences we had. So, to kick it off, this is a 2D platformer starring Mickey Mouse, and the premise is he's going through many of his timeless adventures, spanning from his very first one in 1928 up until the one that happened to come out just before the game's release in 1990, and that is The Prince and the Pauper, I believe. So,
Yes.
I don't know, do you have any anything to add about what the heck this game is all about?
Yeah, I mean, well, to be honest, to start off, I just want to say I love Mickey platformers, and I do realize that we both realize there are a ton of them, and there's lots of different titles, a lot of varying titles. So as we're going through all these Mickey games, throughout, as time goes along, it might get a little bit confusing, but they're all great, really, as far as I know. And so this one is, it's created by Sony. I don't know how many other Mickey games they've made back in that era. It was a cross-platform game, so it did release on Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. I kind of view this one as a standalone title. I don't know if it had any sequels or anything. I think it kind of was its own beast. That's the only other thing I could really, think to mention is that it isn't really tied to a lot of other games as far as I can tell. I might be wrong, but...
I kind of think it's the same. It's not like the Capcom ones that are all kind of tied together, if not officially, then at least through gameplay and elements.
Yeah, they
so,
are.
And then it was later ported to the PlayStation with a different title, which failed to pull up right here. But
no, I got it right here. It's Mickey's Wild Adventure.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And also had a Sega CD release separate from the official Genesis cart.
Correct.
With enhanced
things.
What? Things. Yeah. I think only the PlayStation 1 got enhanced visuals. Maybe the Sega CD one did.
I don't know if it did. I don't think so, but maybe.
The Sony one for sure did. It had like polygons and higher resolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Higher bitrate stuff. So, that's kind of the game in a nutshell.
Definitely.
So, going off of that, what was your prior history with this game? Did you have a prior history with this game?
Honestly, I don't really think I did. Outside of, I think at one point I was trying to remember a specific Mickey game that I played when I was a kid. And I think at one point I had a list of ROMs that I was going through trying to find it so that I could buy the cartridge, which I did.
Right.
But so I think I ended on this one. I remember playing the first little bit and going, oh, Steamboat Willie, this is interesting. Nope, this isn't the game I was thinking of. And so I ended up kind of abandoning it. So I really didn't have a lot of experience going into this. And so, playing it for this show right now has been really the first time I've experienced it. So it's been great, though.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I didn't grow up playing it. I had a Super Nintendo, not a Genesis, but I did not own this. But strangely, or maybe not strangely, my wife bought it for me for my birthday in 2012.
Nice.
I couldn't even tell you what birthday that was. Somewhere around 26 or 27. I don't know.
Wow, that's how old I am now, dude.
Wow.
I didn't realize we were that far apart. But
Yeah, I didn't either.
you should feel really old right now.
I do.
Sorry, dude.
No, so she I don't know, we met working at Disney World, so like we had this Disney connection, and she wanted to get me this Disney game because she knew I was really into games, and she found it on eBay and pretty much just confirmed that I didn't have it and then got it for me. So I'd played through it a little bit on the Super Nintendo back then. I struggled with it and kind of hadn't played it for a while until we busted it out again for this episode. So it was cool to actually sit down and play all the way through it this time. So
Yeah, I don't remember how we got on the subject of talking about Mickey Mania at one point. I think you maybe just mentioned you had it.
I think I said it was the only one I had, yeah.
Right, and so I was like, oh, that's a good contender. And then I looked into it, and I was like, hey, this is a quality game. We should just make this our episode 1. I think it's a good contender, and I think it's definitely worth it. So,
yeah, no, I think it works really well as an episode 1, just because it covers so many decades of Mickey, which is kind of the essence of Disney, which is, I don't know, just kind of a symbolic representation. So,
yeah.
With that, did you, what were your just quick initial thoughts going into playing it?
Okay, yeah. Visually, I thought it was great. Music was pretty good, and difficulty was a bit too high. And I know we'll go a little more into that in a little bit. But outside of that, I loved everything else about it. I'm probably don't enjoy it as much as I enjoy the Capcom Mickey games, or even maybe the Illusion Mickey games. But I still think this one is just as, it's just like right up there. I'd hate to like rank it below it, but I think this goes along with all the quality ones that I just mentioned anyway. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought the premise of going through all those, those Mickey shorts, I guess you could call them. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool idea. I was kind of surprised I'd never played this or heard much about it. I know a lot of people like it, but for whatever reason, I just like really hadn't heard much about it. I don't know if that was due to the high difficulty or what the deal was with that. I never really heard of it, but I would definitely recommend this to anybody who enjoys a good platformer from back then, especially if you like Mickey games and you just haven't picked this one up. I think it's right up there with the other greats. So
totally. Yeah, I would pretty much echo those sentiments. I love the art and animation of it, especially the animation, which we'll get into a little bit later. And then, the music was charming. It was good. The presentation is great. It's got, the classic Mickey font for the level stage names and any of the text in between them. The biggest issue I had with it playing it on the Super Nintendo was that it had like 15-second level load times, which is just asinine for a Super Nintendo game. Like, it just is unheard of.
Yeah.
And especially when you consider a game like Donkey Kong Country had like maybe, and that being like kind of the visual powerhouse of the system, one of the biggest cartridges, 4 megabyte cartridge. Like, it seems almost weird that this one would have bigger, longer load time. So, other than that, I mean, that's just a technical nitpick, but it really does shock you, I guess, going back to playing a system that you don't recall ever having load times. But other than that, the gameplay is good. The challenge was definitely a little high, but overall, once you kind of get the hang of it, of the era, like the Battletoads and the other games of the time, it gives you more longevity to have a more difficult game. And I'm sure that was kind of the thought process. It was kind of a crutch for smaller cartridge sizes, I think, back in the day. But anyway, with that, I think we've set it up and we can kind of jump into discussion. All right, so as we go through discussing the game, we'll kind of go over a few different parts, specifically the look, the sound and music, not the sound of music, and the gameplay and story. So we can kind of kick it off by going over the look of the game. As we mentioned earlier, it is a visually impressive game, and as I mentioned, the animation in particular is exceptional, and that's because it was animated partially, if not entirely, by Walt Disney Feature Animation. In Hollywood. So, I mean, just that alone is huge.
Definitely.
It definitely shows. Yeah.
Sorry.
You see, no, you're good. I was gonna say you see those kind of I forget what the term is for the motion when you have like kind of the same thing drawn in 3 different places as it sweeps across to kind of create the look of motion. It's almost like a comic book thing that you would do, but you do it in animation.
Right.
Things like that, and it's just very smooth. And yeah, it's a little pixelated because it had to be, but it honestly, like the backgrounds and the enemy characters are just very, very high quality. They look legit.
Definitely.
You have any thoughts on the visuals, sir?
Yeah, so before I do that, actually, why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners which versions you played or version you played and how much of it? I don't know, maybe that'll... Because I think now that we're talking about the visuals, it might be good to maybe tell them exactly which ones we were playing.
Okay, yeah. So I am making my statements based on the Super Nintendo version,
right.
And I did play through the entire game of this one, so...
Okay.
Sorry,
I just was thinking.
No, it's a good idea. We should.
Yeah, and so I also played through the entirety on the Super Nintendo version, but then after that, I went and purchased the Genesis version. I did not own the Super Nintendo version, so I did end up emulating that, but went out and spent the money later, so you guys can't get mad at me.
That's right.
But I was playing on an emulator, and so for whatever reason, I realized on my emulator that it had some filters where you could kind of smooth out the pixels. And once I did that, man, this game looks awesome. And I know it's kind of cheating. It's not originally the way it was meant to be played, but really just that one little change. And honestly, I could go downstairs and put the Genesis version in my Retron 5 and do the same thing with it.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, I just think it look, when you did that, it just really even made it look that much better. But even without that, yeah, I agree. It is a little bit pixelated, but I still think it's just a great looking game. And it's odd because when you start out, you are in Steamboat Willie and everything's black and white except for your character. And then as you move through the course, things slowly become, more colored. And all of a sudden, like, boom, you're like looking at everything and it's just full color and it looks awesome.
I absolutely love that effect.
Yeah, I think that it worked really well and just kind of gave it a visual pop that you wouldn't normally, I guess, see otherwise. So it helped those colors pop more once you got out of the black and white. So so visually I think it's a strong contender. I think I like the way the Mickey design that they went with in this one. It's different than the Capcom one and the Castle Illusion one, but it's super classic. It's the Mickey we all kind of know. It's not the epic Mickey with the white face that I'm not a huge fan of.
Right.
And he's what you think of when you think of Mickey, and so he's always smiling. He looks super happy. He's just easygoing, man. And even when he's killing skeletons, he's doing his thing. And so visually I think it's great. I think the levels, some of them are kind of cliche, but they're based off movies or whatever. But I think they have good atmosphere. There's a good variety. Another big thing I wanted to mention, there's a lot of I don't know if I know the exact term for this, but there's a lot of levels with like more of a 3D effect on it.
I was gonna say like a pseudo 3D.
Right. I don't know if that's got a name, but like the staircase that you're going up and it's spiraling. The first level, there's that crane that kind of looks 3D when it moves, and the first time I saw that, I was like, holy crap, what the heck? Like, it was tripping me out.
It looks like a polygon. Yeah, it's amazing. And when you enter the skeleton house, the haunted house, the second level, there's like a 3D effect as you pass through the door, using like a parallax effect, which is really cool.
So I thought that was like super cool. It's not everywhere, but I don't like. It's probably for the best. Like, they didn't overdo it, but every now and then they throw it in, and it's really cool. So I thought that was like worth applause just by itself. I was like, well done.
Totally.
That's pretty cool.
The second to last level, there's like a spiral. If you've ever played the original Battletoads, they achieved this on the NES, but like this basically does the exact same effect, but in 16-bit, so it looks even more incredible. It's like a 3D spiraling tower that you're climbing up some platforms, and the platforms look 3D, and they pass and rotates very smoothly, and I mean, it looks very nice.
Definitely. So another couple things. I thought the backgrounds were nicely detailed. I'm looking at footage right now of the elevator with the skeletons, and there's there's the back wall, and then there's holes in it, and then there's more stone behind that. And so like there's just multiple layers to every level. It's kind of got a Donkey Kong Country feel to it.
Yeah,
in
with
that
like
way.
some parallaxing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think they did a really good job creating and throwing interesting things behind the scenes. Not behind the scenes, but behind the character.
Like little details, background details.
Like that skeleton with the Mickey Mouse ears sitting there.
Yes.
Like that's hilarious. Like I'm
Yep.
so glad they added that. They didn't have to do that, but it gives it some extra character and little things to notice and enjoy and chuckle about as you're playing through. So yeah, I loved that. And then I know another thing we wanted to mention was the UI. What were your thoughts on that?
It's pretty minimalistic from my recollection. I'm not looking at footage right now, but it never gets in the way. You kind of got your marbles, which is your main weapon, your ranged weapon. So you've got kind of a little icon with that in the upper right, and then the upper left you have your hit bar, which is a Mickey glove, and I think the fingers represent how much health you've got, which is a cute touch.
Yeah,
better than numbers and just boring interface. Can't recall much other UI than that.
Yeah, I think that's honestly about it. I appreciate it too, because I hate when there's just like so much stuff on a screen, and I think once you hit the N64, I think it got a whole lot worse. But at this time, it wasn't terrible. I think this is honestly better than the Capcom one, because they have an entire bar that takes up the bottom portion of the screen,
like Mario 3 style.
Right, and and so that's real estate that you're losing. Just to show a lot of things, even though that game does have a lot more to it. This is pretty simple. You have marbles and you have health. There's really not a lot else. Those games, you're changing outfits, and there's a lot going on there. Another thing we got to talk about is the moose chase scene. That's visually pretty gnarly.
Yeah, it's a 3D scene. If you've ever played The Lion King, which I'm sure we'll cover soon.
Definitely.
It's like the wildebeest chase in that, or to compare it to a more modern game, it's like the Animal Crossing current Animal Crossing style, where you're on kind of almost like a cylinder. It gives you a 3D, and as you walk towards the camera, you can go left and right. It looks really nice. It's really smooth, and it gives it good depth, and the animation on it again is really good. So that was really sweet.
Yeah, I would even be willing to say I think this looks better than the Lion King segment with the Stampede.
Yeah.
I just think with the additional kind of curve that the earth has, I think it looks better, because Lion King is just super flat, and the background part is super repetitive, and so it is in Mickey too. It's just the same trees over and over, but I think just the ground alone makes it that much better. Obviously in Lion King you have those wildebeest or whatever coming at you, so they're getting constantly bigger, whereas the moose pretty much stays the same size. But I think it looks better, honestly. I think it's a cooler effect. You can see a little bit more of what's coming ahead of you. You have a little bit more time to react, whereas with Lion King it's a little more unfair, if you ask me. But I remember in this scene when you're running from it took me a while to realize you had to pick up apples to keep going. And I'm like, why is he catching me?
Yeah.
And then finally I realized, I gotta get the apples. So
at first I thought, man, I must have missed time to jump or hit the water or something.
Right.
You gotta keep picking up apples to keep gaining speed, otherwise he will catch you. So but it's a fun little chase, and not too long.
Definitely.
Just kind of the right amount.
Yeah, not too much. Also, another cool little thing they added in the ghost level, I can't remember what it's called. There's kind of like a effect over the screen where it's kind of darker on the edges,
like a vignette.
Right. And so
Lonesome Ghosts.
That's right, Lonesome Ghost. Thank you. So that kind of gives off a more spooky visual, I guess. And so I thought that was a nice touch.
Definitely.
I'm trying to think that anything else.
Water and transparency effects in that level, just when they flood the house.
That's right.
Nothing major, but it's something. We take those for granted now, but that was an achievement on the on the Super Nintendo.
Dude, nobody loves their water effects more than you.
I love water effects.
That's totally your thing, man.
I point it out in every game.
I need to get you a T-shirt that just says "I love water effects," and people will be like, "What?" But
you should.
That would be hilarious. So, other than that, I think that's pretty much. I guess just the character designs are great. I think the character animations. I know you hit on those a little bit. I think the enemies even just look really cool. Like the weasels.
I was thinking the weasels.
Yeah, like tons of character.
Big sprites are animated fully.
Oh, dude, yeah, like when they die, their eyes get real big and dude, it's so polished. It looks really good.
Yep.
So.
And I think one more thing I wanted to touch on when going back to what you're talking about, the Mickey model, each individual level, you're playing as the modern 90s Mickey, but you're going through the level of the era. So like you'll run into your old Mickey self, which is kind of a cool, weird nod that probably doesn't really make sense as far as like canon, but is just awesome. But they're modeled in their era. So like Steamboat Willie Mickey has just black eyes and no whites around them. And each one progressively past that matches how they looked in that cartoon, which is a great touch. They could have just used the same Mickey model and just, like recolored the sprites, but they didn't. They made unique ones for each level. And just real quick, let's just list off the levels and hopefully that will help people kind of visualize what it'll look like if they're familiar with them. If not, they can look them up.
Totally.
So first one, Steamboat Willie from 1928. The Mad Doctor's the next one from 1933. If you have the the Genesis Mega CD or PlayStation version, you get the Band Concert, which is from 1935. That's not in the Super Nintendo version. Then Moose Hunters from 1937. The Lonesome Ghosts, also from 1937. Jump ahead a decade to Mickey and the Beanstalk from 1947. And then all the way to 1990 with The Prince and the Pauper, which kind of was one of the first animated shorts in a long time at that point. I remember that coming out when I was a kid, and it's a big deal. So
I was one when that came out.
Holy crap. So yeah, if you are familiar with any of those, the art style matches almost perfectly. And I think that's something that we kind of want to focus on in this show, and we'll talk more about in future games, is that how it compares to the source material. And this is one example of a game that almost perfectly holds up to the source material visually.
Definitely.
So I think that's probably good for the look of the game. For now, we can jump into the sound and the music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with that? What your thoughts are?
I don't know if this is the strongest music in a Mickey game. From this era, it's harder for me to say because I haven't spent as much time with this game. I'm more new to it, so it's hard to say, and it's hard for me to even pick my favorite between the two consoles. I mentioned this on the last episode. I had a Super Nintendo growing up, but for some reason, I tend to enjoy Genesis music more. It's so different.
Genesis had a much different audio.
It is very different, but there's something about it that it sounds more. And like Donkey Kong Country music is like some of the best there is out there for me.
Yeah.
And I'd say that beat anything on the Genesis, but just the sound library that the Genesis has, I enjoy a lot more. But it's also like really easy for that stuff to sound cheesy. So as far as which is better between those two, I it's hard for me to say. Plus, I don't think I played enough of both of them to like determine which is better. I've watched other people's reviews of this, and people seem to think that the Genesis version does have a stronger soundtrack. I can't really back that up.
I think that comes down to preference, and
totally.
That's a tough one for me to agree with. Yeah.
But I thought the music was good. I thought it fit the game well. I don't know if it really is true to the source material. Maybe you could speak more to that. I didn't do enough homework and watch all of those shorts once more before jumping into this. Shame on me. And it's been so long since I've seen some of those shorts that off the top of my head, I have no idea if it was really true to the material, the source material, but I think it did the job. I don't think anything was really obnoxious or like, ooh, that doesn't fit well at all. So I don't know. Maybe I'm not. Some of the other games we talk about, I'll probably have a lot more to say. But on this one, What about you, dude? Take over.
Yeah.
I'm ruining
Okay.
it.
As far as the music goes, well, then we'll talk about the sound. I can pretty much say with confidence that it's not the music from the shorts. It's original, especially Steamboat Willie. It is reminiscent or evocative of those tunes, but definitely not anything resembling what they actually are.
Right.
And yeah, as far as the instrumentation and all that, it really is a preference as to which sound you like better. I didn't grow up with the Genesis, so I have a nostalgic place in my heart for the sound of the Super Nintendo, which is not to say that different composers and different studios couldn't change what sounds were played through MIDI, but like just the way they kind of sound. I don't know if it's the way it's processed or the frequency or the clock speed or whatever. I really don't know enough about it to tell you, but the Genesis has a very distinct sound, and you can always hear similarities amongst Genesis games, Mega Drive, whatever, if you're in Europe, versus Super Nintendo games, usually the same thing. Again, with the exception probably being the Donkey Kong Country series, which are just in a league of their own, as you mentioned. But yeah, no, the tunes, they're appropriate. They're not super memorable. The first one is kind of gets stuck in my head, and I don't know if that's just because I've played the first level more than the rest of them, or if it's just a little more catchy. But
right,
the rest are kind of a little generic in my opinion, like past the first level.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't know. I feel like the first one has a melody that's kind of like stands out, and the rest of them are kind of just backgroundish.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of just a quick rundown of the music. It's not, I wouldn't say it's terrible. I'd say it's very well done for an original composition. It's definitely better than a lot of some generic Super Nintendo Genesis 16-bit music that I've heard.
Definitely. And like, I think of Lion King, I'm like, yeah, I remember every song in that game, but obviously, because they pulled all of it
direct from the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think
And
for
that's
making
huge.
original stuff, I think they did a fine job. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then to do the other side of this coin, the sound design, I'll kind of just lead this one off. It's not bad. It's very 16-bit sound effects. Not super faithful to what you would associate with Mickey sound effects, like especially the ones from the short films that inspired this.
Right.
They're adequate, and they sound like video game hits and boops and whatever. So like, I don't know. I can't really think of an effect that stood out to me or anything that wasn't pretty generic as just a chiptune.
Right. Yeah. Sound
Like
effects
a
are really,
boing.
really hard to like compare, and find things that really stand out. But so, yeah, I'm sure there was some iconic stuff here and there, but
Yeah.
overall, it's hard to say.
I'll say that there's enough variety that it doesn't really ever get repetitive or annoying, and
Right.
it's done well enough that it doesn't. The hit sound when you jump on something's head is pretty satisfying, and not a whole lot to it. I wish there was a little more. I think the PlayStation version has voice clips. Maybe the Sega CD version does, but I still haven't experienced that or watched it, so I'm not totally sure on that.
And these versions have some Mickey lines.
Yeah, or at least the Genesis one does. I actually don't think the Super Nintendo one does.
Are you sure?
I'm not sure.
I thought he goes, uh-oh.
Yeah, you're right. In the Steamboat Willie one, when you first run into Mickey,
Right.
Mickey, he does go, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah."
So there's a little bit, but it's definitely not enough.
Very brief. Yeah. So, and then other than that, like the villains, like you encounter Pete, but he doesn't really make any of his Pete sounds.
Yeah.
Kind of just the bonk when you jump on his belly, and the Mad Doctor, same thing. So
That was pretty accurate, dude. I liked it. That was good.
Thanks. Here all day. So yeah, and then unless you got anything else to say on the sound design, we can move on to gameplay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So as we kind of have talked about, the gameplay is pretty much mostly 2D platformer. There is just a little stint of that 3D running towards the camera bit, and then it's kind of a I don't know what you call it, like a surfboard type area where it's still 3D platforming, but you're like on an auto scroller that's
Right.
like a medical table scrolling across a level full of saws, and you just kind of jump and avoid them and then transfer from one to the other. So still 2D platforming, but other than that, mostly just simplistic jumping and writing stuff.
Yes.
gameplay is pretty tight. Mickey's my biggest qualm, and this is something I saw brought up in another review, is like when you're jumping, if you don't let go of the jump button, you'll just immediately start jumping again, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, whose idea was that?
I've never seen that in any other game. Like, it's always once you hit the jump button once, if you're holding it down, you stop when you land.
Right.
I don't know. That's a weird quirk, and it takes a little bit to get used to, but you get the hang of it. I mean, it's pretty easy to let go of the jump button.
Yeah, it didn't really bother me a whole lot. So,
let's see. Gameplay wise, like some of the hit detection is a little, maybe not bad, but a little wonky and
yeah, there were a couple times I got robbed, dude. I was like, really, that hit me? Come on.
Yeah, especially in the second level, the Mad Doctor one. The skeletons, when you defeat them, they explode into like 10 or 20 little skeleton bones, probably like 10, but it feels like more, and those bounce all over the screen. Brutal. And you cannot touch any of them. Each one is one hit. Brutal. It is very brutal. And honestly, I don't think prior to this week I'd ever gotten past that part. So,
what do you think about Mickey's jump mechanic in this game?
It's fine. It's not perfect. I feel like I don't know if it's floaty or if it's a little.
I like floaty with my Mickey games.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's not bad.
Had no issues. It's not Mario, but that's mostly what I play.
Yeah, but I don't
so
want,
in that regard,
I don't want Mickey to be Mario. You know,
you're right.
So yeah. I like a little float.
Yeah, fair enough. In that regard, it's actually not that different from Epic Mickey, which is kind of the only other one I've really played. So it's kind of interesting that they have similar physics.
Yeah,
as far as jumping.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you can jump on enemies in this game because you have your marbles that you can throw at enemies, but A, you don't always have marbles to throw, and B, it's nice just to be able to jump on things to kind of get through levels quicker. Because sometimes with those skeletons, I was like, I'm tired of throwing marbles and dodging skeletons, so I'm just gonna
hit him like 3 or 4 times.
Right, so I'm just gonna jump on this guy and keep moving, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes I forgot you could do that, and some Mickey games you can't jump on them, other ones you can. So I think I'm on the let me jump on them, team.
Totally.
I appreciate that.
I agree with that. I think that's a pretty good staple of 2D platforming that is obviously inspired by Mario, but it serves its purpose well, and I think it works. And it's nice that I don't think there's really any soft locks where you like have to defeat the enemies before you can scroll and stuff like that. Like you can just zip by them if you really want to, jump off of them once and keep going. So that's nice. I appreciate that. Because in games like Battletoads, that happens a lot where you get locked into an area, a section, and then you have to defeat everything on screen. And that's kind of just a staple of the time. A lot of 2D side-scroller beat-em-ups, Simpsons and stuff like that. That was just kind of standard. So I'm glad that they didn't force that on you.
Definitely. All right, dude. I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room.
All right, let's do that.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
The difficulty, bro.
Oh, just in general, yes.
Yes, we should totally talk about this.
Yeah, it is a tough as nails game. It is it is brutally unforgiving, and it wouldn't be as big of a deal if there was infinite continues, like if you just kind of had a checkpoint and you could start over from the beginning of the level or start over from halfway through the level. But no, you have a certain amount of continues, and if you lose those all, you start the game all the way over, which is that's a little bit of a short-sightedness in game design right there.
Definitely. And I'll be the first to admit I had to use cheats on this game. Yes.
Yeah, I'll admit that too.
I know. Shame on me, but honestly, we just want to play this game, man. We just want to enjoy it. And having to start over every 10 to 15 minutes is not enjoyable. And as you play through the game, you learn it, and you go back and you play it for another time, and you get further. And that's half of the enjoyment. And maybe, in the 90s, I would enjoy that.
As a kid, I would have too, yeah.
Totally. And if this was one of 5 games I had, I would play this sucker until I beat it. But it's 2017. We're grown men. We have jobs. We have wives. We don't have time for that, dude. Like, I need to play this game, and I want to enjoy it, and I want to see what it all has to offer right now. And so eventually it's like, you know what? I'm going to have to turn on unlimited continues, basically. And once I did that, it was so much more enjoyable.
Agreed.
Because every time you got to that firework or you got to a new room, it was like, all right, if I die now, I can start back here, and it won't be a big deal. And so after that, I had a great time. And there are some Mickey games for the Super Nintendo and Genesis that do work that way. Yeah, if you die, you got to start over, but you only start at the beginning of the level. You don't have to start over at the beginning of the game.
Right.
And
that's a huge difference.
Changing the difficulty in the options menu of this game doesn't really do anything other than change how many, I think, is it continues you get?
Continues. Yeah, it's just continues. It adds like, I don't know, 3 or 5 or something.
Right. And so it doesn't change how easy it is to kill them, the enemies.
How many there are, how many hits. Yeah,
right.
Nothing.
And so it's a brutal game. But I will say, after having beat the whole game and then played the beginning multiple times following that, we right before we started recording, I was playing through it just because I was waiting for you. And dude, I was doing a lot better. I got through the first level and a half. I got to the elevator and the skeletons without dying once.
Nice.
And I was doing good. I felt like I was like, all right, I'm starting to remember how this all works. And so, yeah, I'm sure with time I could probably play through a lot more of it without having game overs and starting over and stuff. But so I don't know. There's different things that play into making this game as difficult as it is. One of them for me is enemies off screen, enemy placement in general. Yeah. But like weasels off screen that shoot you and you can't even see them.
That sucks.
Stuff like that where it's just we watched a whole video review on talking about enemy placement in this game. It's not very good. There's a lot of like poor choices in where they place bad guys, and I don't know. It almost feels like it was overly difficult for the sake of being difficult. But
right.
Which brings me to the term that I've coined, and I mentioned it last week here, and I'm trying to get it copyrighted.
We're gonna start a hashtag.
Yes, but I consider this game, I'll give it my stamp of blockbuster brutal. Jeph, would you like to explain really quickly to the listeners where that kind of comes from? Assuming you're following where my train of thought is coming from.
If it's where my train of thought is, it's that it's designed for the first portion of the game specifically to be a little bit more difficult because they don't want you to beat it when you rent it from Blockbuster.
Bingo.
Okay, good. Glad we're on the same page there. I had to like really stop and think about that. But
no, that's good.
It was something admitted by the designers of The Lion King, and we'll discuss that probably when we get to that episode. But
yes.
It was a very common practice of the era to make the first few stages. This was a directive from like Disney Interactive,
right?
But make the first few levels a little bit harder so that you reduce the chance of somebody beating it on a rental, because if you rent it and you enjoy it and it's a little too tough, you're more likely to buy it than if you rent it, beat it, then no more revenue for you if you're Disney. So
right.
And unfortunately, this game follows that formula almost identically to The Lion King. Like the difficult section is about the same, like the second level, and it's like the same type of thing where you're like the part we were talking about where you're riding on like a medical table through a dungeon is like the ostrich part in The Lion King, and it's like 1-to-1 just as difficult.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's I don't know if you want to elaborate more on that, but it's basically the first few levels of this game are really hard.
Yep. No, you did a great job, dude. I think that was pretty brilliant. And then I still think it stays pretty actively difficult throughout.
It maintains, but yeah, it's not. I feel like it eases up a little bit. It's more just regular platforming and not so many of those. Maybe the Lonesome Ghost part's a little tough there's some ghost placements where you have to take a hit.
Right. There's that. I thought the moose hunting level was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's true. With all the stuff falling and avoiding the guy charging, and yeah,
at least for your first playthrough. After you've played it, you kind of know what to expect, and then all right, there's going to be a branch that's going to drop, and then a moose is going to come out of nowhere. If you pay attention to Pluto, you'll know when stuff's coming. But man, that first playthrough was intense. There's just stuff falling everywhere, and then
really slow.
Yeah, and the moose just comes in way too fast, and I was like, I kept mistiming my jumps because I was anticipating it, and it was freaking me out. And Pluto was just jumping him like no big deal. So yeah, I think we've got the point across is that this isn't an easy game, and if you have the option to play this with cheats on, I highly recommend it. It's a much more enjoyable experience. And it doesn't take anything away from the game to be able to continue as many times as you want. If you were able to
infinite
just
lives.
run by bad guys and get hit and not die, I think that's different than
Yeah.
just, all right, do it over. You screwed up, try it again. But
Yeah.
that's just me personally.
No, and I agree with that. It's basically it. Turn on infinite lives, and you pretty much should enjoy this game.
Definitely.
And you'll figure it out, and you'll get better each time, and you'll beat it. And I know we've kind of harked on how hard it is, but don't let that stop you from checking it out. It's definitely a good game. It's not broken.
Yeah. Super random thing that has nothing to do with what we're talking about currently. You might have mentioned that this game was published by Sony ImageSoft. Did you mention that?
You did.
I did.
Yes.
I don't remember that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of weird that a Nintendo game was published by Sony.
Right. Or a Sega one for that matter. I mean,
right.
PlayStation and Saturn.
Yeah, that's
competed pretty
true.
Fiercely.
But not at this point though, right?
No, not at this point. No, exactly. And that's why Sony had not entered the hardware market, so they were definitely exploring the publishing and development side of things.
Was the Sony Nintendo console thing after this? I can't remember.
It was like the same year. It was
okay.
Like I think it fell apart like that January.
Okay.
93.
Yeah, because even after this game, they made some more games for that. Well, they didn't make them, but they published them. But I don't know. It's just weird seeing the word Sony on a Nintendo
really
game. And I'm looking through all the games that they published on different consoles, and honestly, most of them aren't really anything noteworthy. It's a lot of like really weird Last Action Hero, Hook, Super Dodgeball for NES. Just like some really random games. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that. So
I had one as a kid that was a Bugs Bunny one, and it was actually almost identical to this game. I mean, as we're talking about this game, I'm realizing how similar it is.
Really?
And I think it was published by Sony, but it was developed by Sunsoft, but I could just be remembering a different game. But yeah, on a separate note, if you enjoy just old cartoon games that are like this, if you enjoy this game, you will probably like the game Rabbit Rampage, and you should check it out.
Dude, come on. That's off Disney. We can't be promoting that.
That's right. No, after Who Framed Roger Rabbit, everything's fair game.
Fair enough. It's all in the same universe.
All right. With that, we should probably move along into the story real quick, which we've kind of covered already. So, essentially, you're Mickey revisiting some of your classic cartoons. I'm not sure if there's like an actual reason.
There is,
for that.
bro. There's a whole
Pete.
There's a whole story in the game manual, which I don't own, but I pulled up online today, and I totally meant to add it to the show doc, and I forgot. But I have it here in front of me right now. If you're interested to hear it,
yeah, let's hear it. You've got this.
All right, it's not too long, so I'll go quickly. All right, now I'm backing out. Yeah, okay. So here we go. Join Mickey Mouse on a spectacular adventure through time as he relives some of the most thrilling moments of his career. I'm realizing right now this is not really the story.
But it kind of is.
Yeah. You start where it all began, way back in 1928 with Mickey's first animated feature, the black and white classic Steamboat Willie. Here, you'll have to help Mickey brave a variety of puzzles and dangers before continuing through 6 other animated features in a journey that will eventually lead Mickey face to face with the biggest, meanest Pete anyone's ever seen. Fortunately for Mickey, he won't have to travel alone. Along the way, skilled players will be able to find Mickey's faithful pal Pluto, as well as 7 vintage Mickey Mouse cameos from each of the shorts featured in the game. But time is fleeting. If you're going to get Mickey safely through 65 years of film history, you better start playing now. That last line really reminds me of the line it says when you beat the game. Do you remember what it says?
I do not.
It says, I'm paraphrasing, "Thanks for playing this game. If you enjoyed it, why not buy another copy of this game?"
Oh, at the end of the credits.
Yeah. Like, what?
No, what was that?
You are way overstepping your bounds, game. How dare you?
Yeah.
Like, what? I'm not going to go buy a second copy of this game.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe to get the other version, like the Genesis one, if you had this
True.
Super Nintendo one, like, Yeah, maybe, but there's not a real reason to justify that. They're just being greedy.
Anyway, but yeah, we pretty much covered the storyline. There's not a whole lot to it. Usually in Mickey games, somebody gets kidnapped. It's either Minnie or Pluto, but not really any kidnapping in this one. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
This one was more like a retrospective more than anything. It's just kind of Mickey Mouse, this is your life.
Well, I guess it's cool because I guess the thing I didn't know about this game was it was originally planned to be released as a part of Mickey's 65th birthday.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that would have only left the company 6 months to develop the game, which I'm really glad they didn't stick to that.
Likewise.
Because there's a lot of games I can think of right now that in order to get a game out at a specific time for a specific thing, they sacrifice significant gameplay to get it done. So basically, they decided to scrap that. And then, but that was kind of the original plot was, hey, we'll have him go through all the highlights of all, stuff throughout the years, and then we'll make that into a game. It'll release, but then it released in 1994 the year after his 65th birthday. But I appreciate you game developers for not doing that, or whoever made that call. Why not make a better game that we'll appreciate rather than get it out on a year of his birthday or something? But no, but as we were talking about the story of this, I think it's weird because you look at the cover of the game and you see the Mad Doctor guy. Yeah. And so you assume he's like the bad guy of the game.
Right.
But he's not.
And you fight him as a boss after like the second level.
Right. You're like, did I just beat the game?
Right. Or like, am I going to fight him more down the road? Like, is he going to be at the end of every level?
Right.
Because like you said, the box cover.
Yes.
It's very weird.
Yeah. And do they even mention Pete earlier on? Like, is it even a known goal that's what you're going for?
Not in game. Like, he's there in Steamboat Willie because he was in the cartoon, but like, you just kind of like hit him with your marble 3 times and then jump off his belly to get leverage. Like,
I beat Pete. Good job, everyone.
Yeah, they don't do very well in game of explaining the whole thing.
Right.
Just kind of at the end of each level, it gives you a little text blurb that says, Mickey has saved Steamboat Willie Mickey or something like that. Like, and then you just move on to the next level. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And the last thing I want to mention is that I was kind of surprised that Fantasia was not a level in this.
Yeah, what the heck, dude?
I feel like floating platform, like it would have been a really great level, and it came out in 1940, so it would have been second to last.
Right.
Floating platforms in the stars and just that blue and white starry motif, and they could have easily used the music because it's like old copyright free music. Like, I don't know. Not that they couldn't use the Disney music anyway. Like, I don't know why. There must have been a reason.
Hold on.
I just didn't think of it.
I have a theory. Let me see if this. All right. So there is a Fantasia game for the Sega.
Okay.
And it came out in 1991. So it's a bit older.
Okay.
It came out for the Mega Drive and Genesis. So maybe they felt like they had already tapped that market. I don't know. I haven't played this one. This is one of the games that I really badly want to get a hold of.
I'll have to look it up.
So I'm not sure how similar it is. It is a side-scrolling game. So maybe they just thought, it's already been done. Let's skip it.
Let's tap new cartoons. Yeah.
But heck, dude,
fair enough.
They've tapped into the Sorcerer Mickey thing so many times. Like, what would be one more? Like, especially if you only do one level.
Man.
Yeah.
So that surprised me. That was my biggest comment on the game overall.
Yeah.
Not my biggest comment, but that's just about like levels and what they could have done. Like, I was really surprised to not see that one.
Yeah. Other than that, I think they pretty much hit most of the main line.
The most famous ones, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially with having the band concert on like the Genesis one, because that was the first Mickey cartoon in color. So kind of disappointed I've not experienced that.
Yeah. I realize I was watching footage of it. I guess you go to the level with the giant, so you're up in the clouds, and there's one part where you just bounce off 2 different like butterfly monster things, and you kind of go left, and then there's a question mark and an extra life. You go through there, and boom, there it is. But no, I agree. I was kind of disappointed. Like, we played the version that didn't have all the extra features. So everything I've read seems to lean towards the Genesis being the preferred version to play this, which usually they're very similar, and it all comes down to what looks better or what sounds better. But There's literally just missing parts of this game and the Super Nintendo one, and along with what was I gonna say? I forget. Oh, there's like another level where you're going downstairs in the second level that's not in the Super Nintendo one as well. So it's
weird.
Yeah, I don't know why those things were omitted for the other console, because they're pretty similar. But
like the sprite and level pixel dimensions are all optimized for Genesis, so they're slightly different than the Super Nintendo, and they didn't correct them, and so there's issues with off-screen stuff on Super Nintendo being even worse, and just pixels being, like characters being a little bit bigger looking, therefore taking up more screen real estate, and just different weird things like that. So
right, yeah. So yeah, if you have both systems and you're thinking about picking this up, it seems to be the general consensus to lean towards the Genesis version. There's nothing overly wrong with the Super Nintendo one.
No, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's still a good game. I think it still sounds good. It looks fine compared to the other. So if you find that one for a cheaper price, I wouldn't say, I'd just say go for it. But yeah, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to add, story, gameplay wise, all that.
Yeah,
I think we hit it all.
Yeah, I think so too. So we can kind of jump on into our closing discussion. All right, so to wrap this one up, we basically are just going to kind of give a recap of everything we just talked about, like really brief, and give a recommendation, if anything. And I'll go ahead and kick that off. I really love this game. I would highly recommend it to anyone. Other than the kind of high difficulty, and if you are playing it on original hardware without a Game Genie, it might be a little tough to sink the time into. But if you've got a Game Genie, or if you're emulating, turn on Infinite Lives and you're good. Like it's really enjoyable that way. Beautiful game, decent enough sound, and it's fun.
Yeah. For me, I'm totally right there with you. If you love Mickey's Magical Quest or Mickey's Castle of Illusion, you got to pick this game up. It's right up there with the rest of them. Great game. If you're up for a challenge, you want a platforming challenge, pick this game up and see if you can beat it without using cheats. If you can, you're the master, and well done.
You're a Mickey maniac.
Exactly. And if you love the old Mickey cartoons, pick it up, because there's something about walking up on a giant table for a giant and seeing Mickey ride off on a cork off a bottle from a giant. It's just so cool. You're like, oh, there he goes. That was other Mickey, apparently. I don't know. It's really cool. It's what if Mickey was, running around in all of his other Mickey episodes. I wish that this was an actual short that Mickey did, where he went back in alternate realities, where he went through all these different things. I think that this whole game would make a really cool movie.
Yeah, it would.
But yeah, so overall, I think it's great. I think the physics and mechanics of the game work well. I'm bummed they didn't make 2 sequels following this one, because they did it in other series. Why not just do it with this one? But it's a good game. I think a remake of this game, or an HD upgrade for current gen, would be really cool, with a better continue system, lives feature. I think this game could be really cool in that setting anyways. So
I agree.
2 thumbs up, man. This is a great game, perfect for episode 1.
Yep. Alrighty, well, with that, we are going to wrap up here. So thank you all so much for tuning in to our first inaugural episode. We appreciate you listening. If you have liked or subscribed to us on YouTube or on iTunes, Google Play, any of those, we appreciate that. If you want to leave a review, if you liked what you heard, that helps a lot getting discovered. You can also follow us on Twitter at mouse_bytes. And follow us there for info and news on what we're going to be covering, or new episodes coming out. And I think that pretty much covers it for everything else related to what we cover here, you can go to kayandclay.com, KAYANDCLAY.com, and you will see some of our other sister podcasts. And tune in next month as we cover The Little Mermaid for the NES.
Oh, yeah. Can't wait.
Woo!
Should be fun. Two grown dudes are going to be playing some mermaid games.
Yeah.
Oh, I like what you did there. That was cool.
Oh, thank you. I'm full of them.
You're full of something.
All right.
I don't know what it is.
Something. Yeah, we can't say it. This is a kid's show.
That's right. Sorry.
Family safe. All righty, everybody. Thank you once again, and have a good rest of your podcast listening days.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.